welcome to today's session. I'm sure that you're already aware that today we're talking to Molly Tighe from Chatham University. She's the Archivist and Public Services Librarian. And we're going to be talking about some of the different ways that Chatham is using Forum to preserve institutional history. And Chatham has a really interesting range of projects that they've pursued so far. And they kind of range from more traditional digitization projects to a couple of real-time collaborations that Molly is doing with other departments and programs on campus. So we're going to kind of jump right in here. And I just wanted to start off by showing this, first of all, introducing Molly. So Molly is, like I said, the Archivist and Public Services Librarian at Chatham, and I'll give her a chance to kind of talk a little bit about her role in a second here. But I just wanted to point out that when you go to the public collections list on ArtStore, if you search for Chatham University, you'll see that they have this whole lineup of public collections that are sort of cover a whole range of different topics. So we're going to touch on a couple of these today, but obviously we can't get through all of them. But it also gives you a quick snapshot of kind of how ambitious their digital collections work is at Chatham. So Molly, if you want to kind of chime in and give us a quick overview of your role at Chatham and your responsibilities with these different collections, I think that would be a really good place for us to start.
Absolutely. So I'm Molly Tighe. I'm the Archivist and Public Services Librarian at Chatham University. We are in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been here just about 4 years now. I just had my 4-year anniversary. And my position includes a number of different areas. The archives, of course, the archives and the special collections are both are both areas for which I am responsible. And I do also have some public service librarian responsibilities, which cover collection development and serving as a liaison to history and political science departments. And I also do some general reference as part of the public service library team.
Okay, great. And so so we're looking at this fairly extensive list of public collections that you guys have. So I thought that we could start off by talking a little bit about just what the digital collections landscape is like at Chatham. So like, I guess how many collections, how many items, like general stats about the collections. Can you give us an overview of kind of the breadth and depth that you guys cover?
Sure, absolutely. So so this is a list of the collections that we have on ArtStore Public. Total, we have about 6,700 items in Forum, digital items in Forum, and some of those are component records. So there's 3,300 items that have media, but the actual number of media items is 6,700. A few of the items like the commencement programs and the minor bird are, there will be one record with several media items attached to it. Now that the page turner technology is functioning, where we jumped right on that and
we'll look at an example of one of those in just a minute. It's really cool.
Yeah. So we started working with Forum through the Council of Independent Colleges Consortium on Digital Research and Teaching. So this was a grant-funded project, and a number of institutions were in the consortium, applied to be a part of the consortium, and that gave us access to Forum, and that really helped to jumpstart a lot of these projects here, and all the projects listed here are projects that we've worked on and made public since that grant.
Was there, when you guys applied for the CIC grant, did you apply with specific projects in mind, or was it kind of a general grant to get started with digital collections more generally?
We did have a particular collection in mind. The Eden Hall Campus Construction Collection was the main focus of our application and where we started. As we got to know the capabilities of Forum and the availability of it, and also because the Eden Hall Campus Construction Collection it's a long-term project. We thought we had an opportunity to take some of our other collections and throw them up there as well. So
yeah, that makes sense. So what I'm curious about is, like, in that selection process, when you were looking at other things that you could kind of do in the meantime while you were pursuing that longer term project, how do you guys prioritize collections for digitization? And if you work with born digital collections, how do those kind of get prioritized against physical collections?
Sure. So there are a couple things we consider. Certainly classroom use, or just use in general, whether it's in the classroom or by our non-institutional patrons. The archives, our user community does include current students at Chatham, certainly students at other institutions, faculty, staff, administration, but also outside researchers. So, so when we're thinking about use, we're thinking about all those different users. We do get a lot of questions about alums, and the collections that we have, we help to use to engage with the alumni community. So some of the collections that either help people with the genealogical research or help people understand or even reconnect, in the case of alumni, to reconnect with the school. Those projects definitely have a value for us.
And did they get, when they're available, do you see dramatically higher use of those types of collections?
Definitely. I mean, some of these materials haven't been available. They weren't available at all previously. So, like, I know we're going to look at the one of the scrapbook collections, and they're fascinating. They're these beautiful views into campus life in the early part of the 20th century, and they're fascinating and they're engaging, and they weren't available previously.
Right. And so all of these collections, have these come out of library-based collections, so from your archives and special collections specifically in the library?
Yes. There are some collections like the Craft Babka and Beyond that we've worked with outside departments. The Eden Hall Construction Collection, we've worked to create that collection, so we're collecting it currently. But yeah, these are all collections that we have within the archives.
Very cool. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and jump into one of the first ones that we were going to talk about. So, and you mentioned this one briefly, the Minor Bird Literary Magazine.
Yes.
So can you just give us a little bit of background about why, like, this collection in particular was prioritized for putting online, and what kind of use does this get?
Absolutely. So the Minor Bird is the campus student, undergraduate student literary magazine. So it contains poetry and essays written by students, and the students serve as the editors of it as well. So we're just about, actually we are currently in Chatham's 150th anniversary year, and which is exciting. And so there's lots of interest in campus history, but it's also the 90th anniversary of this publication. So it started as this student literature magazine or journal in 1929. Thanks. So we wanted to help highlight that anniversary. It's also really fascinating content. There's wonderful literary content. The illustrations are also very kind of evocative of the era. I find it fun to look at the covers of from the 50s and how they look like the 50s, and then you go into the 70s and they're all swirly and they're sort of hippie, and so the illustrations are really fun too, and almost all of them include some sort of a play on the bird.
Right. Yeah, there's a definite theme in the covers.
Mm-hmm. And just to note, the name of it is from a Robert Frost poem, and Robert Frost had come to Chatham the year before this publication was established.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned that it's sort of the 90th anniversary of the publication. So I'm wondering, is there sort of a physical preservation concern for some of these? Like for the older ones, they're probably getting up there in terms of like how paper ages, right? So putting them online probably also kind of spares the physical objects a little bit as well as they start to age.
It does, although this collection is in pretty good shape for the most part. One of the reasons we wanted to digitize it was more to provide broader access to it. So we had access to them, physical access to the originals in the archives, but because the alums who may have contributed to this, or to anyone who's interested in reading this publication, they could be anywhere, all over the world or all over the country. So we wanted to be able to make it easier for them to get access to it. The physical conditions they're actually relatively okay.
That's good to hear. Yeah, they look really good. Like when you zoom in, they don't look very damaged or anything like that, and all of the images look great. So I'm a little bit curious about whether or not there are any high-profile Chatham alum who published in this magazine.
Yeah, so the most high-profile alum, and definitely a writer, is Rachel Carson, the environmental pioneer and science writer. The Minor Bird was founded the year that she left. And it was, however, before she left, the literary content that students were producing was published alongside news items in the newspaper. And 1929 marked the year where they decided to pull the literary content out. So we do have literary content that Rachel Carson wrote. Some really wonderful essays. She's a great writer, no surprise there. But we do have a number of the items that she wrote that appeared in the student newspaper in one of our collections, the Rachel Carson collection.
Right, and that is another one in this list. There we go. The Rachel collection on Rachel Carson.
Yep.
And there was a recent Art Store blog post that was about that collection that I would encourage people to go and read, because we don't have time to talk very much about the Rachel Carson collection today. But it's sort of an interesting tie-in with Chatham's general emphasis on sustainability, and that's sort of like a trend that we'll see in the collections that we look at today.
And one other thing to mention about the Minor Bird collection is that the literary content is authored by students. Students are involved in the layout and in the production of it. We created an internship. So I had a student who was one of the editors actually on the Minor Bird over the summer. She did an internship scanning, importing the material into Forum, cataloging. So it provided an opportunity to get a student into the archives and to give them some experience working within the archives too.
Oh wow, she scanned all of these in a single summer?
Yes, I did. My goal was to get 25 of them
Right.
scanned and cataloged, but we did them all.
And there's 85 total. That is a very productive student worker.
Yes.
That's good work. And they have full metadata available. And this is one of the things that I've been paging through kind of as we've been talking is this is the compound object functionality that you alluded to earlier, where you're sort of able to see every page of the issues, which is really nice because they're all illustrated as I've been kind of zooming and panning while you've been talking. Mm-hmm. So they're absolutely gorgeous. So the next collection that I wanted to talk about, and I think I have it open here, yes, was, okay, so you alluded to the Scrapbooks collection just a minute ago. So this is the Edna Mackey Houston Scrapbooks collection. And yes. Can you give us a little bit of background about who Edna Mackey Houston is?
Absolutely. So she is an alum. She attended Chatham, which at the time was called the Pennsylvania College for Women. It was renamed Chatham in the 50s. But she attended, she lived on campus, and she remained very involved in the alumni community following her graduation. Mm-hmm. And the Scrapbooks really attest to that because they cover both her student years and years after she had graduated, and they cover like some of the content. It's really wonderful content. Some views of I love the views of the dorm rooms. You just don't often see a dorm room from a student in 1900, and posters that are up on the walls and pictures that are up on the walls, and even the students hanging out and being silly, climbing up on the rooftops. We see a lot of formal posed pictures of people in this era, and the student, a college student in 1900 did a lot of the same things that college students are doing today. Fun hijinks around campus and enjoying each other's company. And so it's a real treat to be able to see those here. Yeah, we can see there's students that are up on the window, out on the roof up there. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's a really interesting kind of glimpse into what student life was like. And so these, I'm sort of circling back to my preservation question from before, because these look like they're in very different condition than the minor bird. And I feel like scrapbooks are really notoriously problematic with the way they age because of how they're assembled. And so these, it seems like making them available online, especially given how much interest there seems to be with the alumni community, this really does like save the physical objects.
Absolutely. There would be, it's a lot harder for us to provide access to these in-house. We would really want to be with a patron step by step. And one of the reasons we wanted to do some digitization of this collection, and we have another one that's also digitized, the pages were already removed from the spine, so it made it a little bit easier for us to do the scanning. But we have, these are great. There's like before and after finals where they're acting real silly, but we do have some interest in scanning some of our additional scrapbooks and potentially looking for grant funding. And so this provided us an opportunity to assess the interest and assess the feasibility, gauge the time it would take to do something like this, to try to get some additional funding for a larger collection. And they do, here we see some of the photographs of our May Day events. Chatham had these elaborate May Day celebrations with costumes and maypoles and performances, and the photographs they're wonderful. And so we have those are depicted, and the importance of those for the campus community are definitely evident in the scrapbook.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I'm also noticing here, I was just looking over the data record, is that so you've sort of photographed each individual page of the scrapbook, and then it looks like there's a finding aid that's available for the collection. And so it seems like this probably came together really quickly, right? If you had a finding aid that had existing data, did you just use that to populate these sort of baseline fields and then title the pages individually? And that probably came together very quickly, right?
It did. It did. The most time intensive part was the scanning, probably.
Right.
And the finding aid is really a collection level view of it, but it is wonderful that we were able to add the link to the finding aid into the metadata there. So if anybody wants to see the collection fuller, yeah. So here's theater collection. I know, yeah. There's just fun. So this collection actually is 2 scrapbooks, and one is the one we're seeing here, and the other is primarily news clippings. So we didn't digitize that one to put up here, but the finding aid does describe that one as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And it seems like the photographs are probably the bigger payoff for the alumni than the news clippings. So it makes sense to prioritize these first. And,
absolutely.
All right. So I think I'm going to jump out of this collection really quickly, and let's move into talking about the craft Babka and Beyond collection, because this is really different in terms of the format of the material that's being made available and also the subject matter. But I think it's a really interesting extension of the same sort of institutional history preservation that drives the digitization and delivery of things like scrapbooks and student-created content like the Minor Bird. So the craft collection, these are oral histories that are contemporary, right? So you look at the dates, these are all from sort of this year and the previous 2 years. And I will let you kind of describe the craft project and your whole collaboration with them, because I think you could probably summarize it much better than I could.
Sure, absolutely. So CRAFT stands for the Center for Regional Agriculture, Food, and Transformation, and it's a research center here at Chatham. Chatham has a very strong food studies program, and this research center has evolved out of that program. CRAFT has a number of projects. They host events, they host dinners, and they do a lot of work with documenting agriculture and food stories in the region. And as part of that, they've created this, or started to create this Western Pennsylvania Foodways collection. And that looks through a number of different projects to gather together contextual information like oral histories, recipes, images, basically a variety of documentation that documents the agriculture and food stories specific to this region. Babka and Beyond is the first, and it's focusing on grain and grain production and those who are working to produce grain and work with grain in Western Pennsylvania. And so to do that, they went out in the field and they collected all these oral histories. They're continuing with a variety of different additional oral history projects and different projects to document the food history of the region. And so the archives connected with them because it's really interesting work that's happening at the university. The archives has the infrastructure to store these materials, store this content as research material and to make them available in the long term. So we were able to collect the full oral histories from the CRAFT team and then integrate those into our workflow to catalog and deliver digital collection content. So this is the first project that we've done with them, but as they're continuing new projects, we will have additional collections. but it's worked out really well, where the archives is basically administering the forum collection, where the archives is setting it up. We set up the cataloging screens and the collection fields, and went back and forth a few times with the project staff. We have some material that some metadata items that initially we thought we would use this term, or maybe we would use this term, and discussion about we're still working on getting the transcripts in here, but working together with the craft team, we were able to come up with a workflow that allows for us to show everything that the researchers need to see to access the collection, as well as the oral histories themselves. And the craft team does not only the collecting of the oral histories, but the cataloging screens have been, and the catalog and metadata creation has been done by that team as well. So we set up user access for them, and even different screens for student workers that are working on the project, and another screen for a craft project manager to be able to see everything. So it's worked out really well.
Yeah, and the craft team are not trained catalogers or anything, right? So they're sort of, you're doing a lot of the project design and getting things set up, and then they're going in and entering production level data kind of with your guidance. Absolutely. Yeah, and I wanted to, hang on, let me see. I'm going to reshare my screen here because I've got the project pulled up, and I just wanted to open, because I think that your workflow with designing the cataloging screens is really interesting, and I thought it would be a little easier to talk about if we looked at an example. Sure. So here you can see these are the fields that you guys have sort of laid out, and so you've got this full cataloging screen, which is what you described just now, which includes absolutely everything. And you're clearly using some custom fields here where you've got fields for capture, and then you're sort of mapping them for display when you go to publish, but you've broken them out into these sort of different component parts in a way that I think is really, really smart, especially if you're working with people who aren't necessarily trained professional catalogers, using the cataloging screens to create some structure and especially things like clustering fields that are related to one another so that they are side by side, and it makes the difference between how those fields are meant to be used really clear. If you're a cataloger who's kind of going through field by field, it helps a lot to know what the difference between related fields is if they're side by side.
Absolutely.
And so I think you guys have been really strategic in how you use these.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's where the transcription potentially will go. We're playing with different options for that. And then the other materials tab there, we haven't used it yet, but we've been talking about how we can handle different items that the interviewees may offer the archives as the Western Pennsylvania Foodways collection. While the interview is taking place, often there'll be pictures or there could be accompanying video that is available and potentially could help contextualize or enrich the interview content. So that's another place where we're looking to build that out.
Oh, that's interesting. So sort of in the course of the conversation, they sort of refer to or produce this other related documentation.
Exactly.
But so would you guys be collecting that physical material, or would you just be collecting digital versions of it?
Well, we could do both. And so I've worked with Craft to put together deeds of gift for both of those scenarios, or even gift transfer forms. They're just different versions of the deed of gift depending on the interviewer's comfort level and just how appropriate it would be for the interviewer to be doing this paperwork. So they can also collect material, and then the information is transferred to the archives, and then the archives can do the deed of gift.
Yeah, okay, so that's something that I find really interesting with this project, is that if the archives weren't involved and weren't sort of consulting in the way that you are, I think procedural things, procedural details like getting deeds of gift and preserving contextual material like that could kind of fall through the cracks in the interest of kind of pulling the larger project together. And so I'm curious, from your point of view, when you were approached about working with the Craft Research Center and helping them kind of pull together this Western food, hang on, I have to make sure I get the name of this right, the Western Pennsylvania Foodways Collection. It's a big project because you're building a collection in real time, and you're also making it adhere to all of your existing archival workflows. So what kinds of things, when you guys first started out, had they not really thought about that you feel like you changed the direction of the project a little bit?
Absolutely. One of the biggest places probably would be with the interview, release, and consent forms. We did a lot of work to revise those forms to make sure that the language would allow, assuming everybody agrees to it, but that it would allow for non-exclusive, perpetual use of the materials, and all the legalese, all the stipulations that have in that form, and opportunities for either party to opt out or to provide caveats to that access. But from the archives perspective, we really need to have that in place if we're going to provide access to it.
Right.
So and as well as that, as well as the gift forms that sometimes can accompany other related material like photographs.
Yeah,
but that was one of the big places we the archives really helped to, like you said, sort of change the direction of what they were thinking about procedure.
Yeah, because I can see like an alternate version of this project where they collected all of that stuff and then basically donated it in a big, like in a one fell swoop to the archives after it was all already said and done. And by collaborating with you early on while they're still actually acquiring and collecting this content, you've been able to really streamline the submission process and the workflows, right? You guys have divided the labor in this really nice way where you do a lot of the project administration and set them up for kind of successful data capture and description. But you've also smoothed out a lot of things that can be wrinkles on the long tail of a project like this, which is like, oh, did we ever ask this person for permission to share this? And like, oh, can we show this video? Can we use their voice? Can we show their face? That kind of stuff. Like, I think that this project is a really great example of the value of getting the library and the archives involved in project planning earlier in the life cycle so that you can really eliminate a lot of those things that come up kind of towards the end when you start being like, okay, great, let's put this online. And then you realize you maybe haven't checked all the boxes that you needed to earlier on.
Absolutely, absolutely, because this is intended to be a research collection, and so to enable that research, especially to a broad audience, and using the internet, there does have to be specific language in place about worldwide distribution, and the rights can be a big hurdle if they're not addressed in the early phases of the project. So that was a big win.
Right, and you guys are using, it looks like rightstatement.org statements in your metadata, which is absolutely fantastic and helpful to people who want to kind of use or refer to this content later.
Yep.
We had there were a couple of questions about the scrapbooks that I think we'll circle back to at the end. But there's one question here about whether or not you guys are using work records in any of your projects, because we've looked at a few examples where you're using compound objects, and I just thought I'd give you an opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We are using work records with the Minor Bird, and we're using work records with the commencement programs, which are both, the commencement programs or the Minor Bird, either one.
Mm-hmm.
They are, the work record is for the issue, and then the component pieces are, or actually, are we using them? Now I can't remember.
For the Minor Bird, what I'm wondering is, because compound objects are kind of recent, and it looks like some of these are PDFs and some are compound objects. So did you guys change the way that you're handling the delivery of these when compound objects became publishable?
Well, we did, but the PDF, there's a couple still legacy ones in there. I can't seem to get them updated, or I'm just working on getting that straggler there. We did. Before compound objects were available, we had all the individual pages sort of waiting for that functionality. And in the meantime, we converted all the images to PDFs and merged them into one PDF mm-hmm. and made the collection available online as PDFs. The problem with that was that you had to download the issue in order to see it. You couldn't page through it.
Right.
And so since then, we've been going through, and that's exactly that. You have to download that one.
Right, which is a very different experience to the fun page through we were just doing.
Absolutely. We did. So actually, I don't think that these are work records now that I think about it. We did look at doing work records for the scrapbook. And did a bit of discussion about, whether it would be one record and then the individual pages would be pieces of that work, mm-hmm. Or even there's pages and then the individual images on those pages. And I did go over this. I had a really wonderful, thoughtful session talking about it with Kelly Smith. And I think we decided to, I don't think we've actually implemented work records on this one yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's sort of perfect that we ended up circling back around to this, because the question was specifically why and how did you decide to digitize pages rather than individual photographs in the scrapbook collection? So it sounds like you're sort of in the process still of deciding whether you're going to change the way these are being presented.
Well, we do actually have, we have gone through and done a lot of individual clips of the images. Mm-hmm. So we could put those in as maybe component pieces of each page, but we actually really wanted to maintain the page as a whole for a couple reasons. One, because a lot of them have some margin, some information written in the margin mm-hmm. by the creator. And not only does that provide interesting metadata, often identifying people, but it also helps to envision the scrapbook and the scrapbook page as a whole, as a unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's also usually the pages have been assembled with a certain sensibility or goal. And so sometimes it is nice to, even if you end up breaking them out and making the individual images available, it's nice to see how the person who created the book chose to assemble the individual pages.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Well, I'm glad that we got to sort of get back to that question, because there was one other one, which was just whether these were digitized on or off site.
Oh, they were all digitized on site.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head what your setup was like for doing the digitization?
I sure do. So these ones we did on my beautiful Epson Expression 10,000 XL.
Very nice.
I'm pretty sure that's its number. Maybe it's 11,000, but it's the graphic arts Epson scanner, the largest you can get without spending $50,000. I've used this machine at for many, I mean, this model for many times, and I definitely like it.
Yeah, it does good work.
That's the one we used. Yeah.
All right, that's fantastic. That was sort of a curveball question, and I'm impressed that you know that off the top of your head.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I want to transition now from talking about the craft project to talking about the Eden Hall campus project. And when I was sort of mentioning before that I feel like Rachel Carson's legacy looms large at Chatham in this emphasis on sustainability, one of the things that we mentioned, right, is that the craft program is very closely tied to the Falk School of Sustainability. And then you see there's this mention here of the Eden Hall campus, which is sort of an experiment in green campus design. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about the way that Forum is being used to capture and document the construction project to basically build this new branch of the Chatham campus, which has it's hitting all kinds of marks from a sustainability point of view.
Yeah. So the Eden Hall campus is Chatham's newest campus. It's about 40 miles outside of the city of Pittsburgh, and it was donated to the university in 2007.
Like the land was donated?
Yes, okay. The land was donated. It had been, it actually has a wonderful legacy. It was owned by Sebastian Mueller, who is a Heinz company executive, and he built it as a retreat for the female workers of the Heinz company. So it has this wonderful legacy, and a legacy of supporting women's education as well. So the campus was given to Chatham, and Chatham decided to build the world's first fully sustainable campus of higher education on the site. And so it's not only a big, but also very beautiful campus, integrating elements of sustainability such as wastewater reclamation, geothermal heating. It has, I think, one of the largest solar arrays in North America, or at least it did at some point. Very intense focus on sustainability, and the Craft School of Sustainability is based out there. Coursework in sustainability can range from sustainable business practice to the food studies program as well, and also green building. And so we have this robust sustainability coursework at Chatham, and we're building this campus that's implementing some of the most recent and important pieces of sustainable building practice and design. We thought that would be a wonderful teaching tool for those interested in learning about it and promoting the use of sustainable building practice. So we've been collecting this material about creating this campus. The architectural drawings, or some of the architectural drawings, is what is shown here. We've collected the material both from departments on campus, finance and administration department, and as well as working with contractors, general contractors, and the architecture firm. And the architecture firm, which is named Methuen, and they are leaders in sustainable building. And their archivist, Joshua Myers, has been really fantastic in helping to make sure that the archives here at Chatham is able to collect all the building records and the architectural drawings. And additionally, to help with research in the rights and helping us to establish that, excuse me, that with the client agreement, Chatham has the right to, has copyright to these, so we can show them.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest questions, was because some of these documents sort of include the firm name on them, and I was very impressed that this collection is one of the public collections, so it's totally open.
Yep.
So I'm curious, what were you in the archives approached about participating in documenting this, or did you seek out the opportunity to kind of gather up some of this material as it's being generated? Like, I think a lot of people would look at the collaborations that you have managed to achieve, and they're curious about how those relationships formed, or like how you met these other people on campus. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Just like, how did this opportunity come up?
Sure. So the Eden Hall construction collection idea the idea really came up when we were presented with the option to apply for inclusion in the Council of Independent Colleges consortium. And we were thinking about things that are happening at Chatham and collecting initiatives that are happening at Chatham, and how they can be, how digital technology can help to foster teaching and research. And with everything that was happening out at Eden Hall, and with talking to a few different departments across campus, we settled on this idea. And so that really prompted the focused collection on Eden Hall construction. We do have a building and grounds collection, but that grant really helped to foster this. And because that grant also included engagement with faculty, these materials have been used in interior architecture courses. We're still looking to continue to make them available and to encourage their use in classroom assignments. With Art Store, we are able to make them available to other Art Store subscribers. So if there are some of the things that are not fully public, if there are architecture programs out there that would be interested in potentially using some of the materials that we haven't yet made public, or that we're in the process of making public, we'd be happy to explore that. But yeah, so the collaboration here really started with the grant, and then reaching out from the archives to entities that would have additional material. So I was able to get in contact with the archivist at Methuen, actually through going to an SAA conference, and then we've reached out to some of the other contractors, and but the Methuen team has been just invaluable in helping us to collect this material.
Yeah, it's nice that they are involved as well. That seems like a really good partnership.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the interior architecture program that you just referenced? I'm just curious how the students are using these materials. Is it like in assignments, or are they doing like original research with them, or what's the application there?
Sure. So one of the assignments was using, and one of the assignments occurred before we had these drawings, but we also have a lot of photographs of the construction site, and students were asked to review those photographs and identify the phases of construction happening. So that was one application. We do also have a number of what are called red line drawings, where they're the architectural drawings, but they include red line hand-drawn markings where the architect has made changes or requested adjustments to the original plan. And those are wonderful because they show the process of being an architect, of being on site, and what can happen when you're actually in the field. And so we're really excited about making those available as well. We've limited we've limited access to some drawings based on a couple different criteria. For example, we're not making access at all at this point to any of the security drawings, the security system. Right. There's been a bit of debate about providing access to the drawings of the dorms. Within architecture community, there are architectural archives community. I've heard different viewpoints on it. Some saying that you don't actually learn anything, or you don't learn, well, by showing the drawing of a building, you're not necessarily pointing out where people are at different times. So it might not be a security risk to have just the floor plans. Right. You might actually be able to guess what the floor plans are just by looking at the building. But that's one place where we have the rights to do it. We just haven't yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting problem. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're sort of approaching the last 7-ish minutes here, and I want to, right before we open it up to questions, I wanted to really quickly just show another project where you guys have a really great student work tie-in. And I'm plugging your presentation that's on our support site that's all about the Eden Hall campus. And actually, let me go ahead and show. You have this great PowerPoint presentation, which people can download if they're curious about learning more about the Eden Hall campus. That was a talk you gave at SAA a little while back. I just want to jump in here because we were going to look at your student film collection, and I might need to log back in here, but can you just talk really quickly and explain to people what this assignment was? Because it kind of like ties together two of your other forum collections in this nice way, where students were using forum-based content in an assignment, which then ends up back in forum, and you're delivering it as an institutional collection.
Yes, and with this collection, I do want to give props to Muhlenberg College and Susan Falcone. She's a long name. I'm sorry, Susan. Maldonado. She did a project like this at Muhlenberg that I learned about through the CIC consortium, and it was a real inspiration for us. So definitely props going out to Susan at Muhlenberg. But so we do have a collection of historical films and audio that's available through Forum, and I've worked with our faculty in the Film and Digital Technologies program. In particular, there's one class where it's a graduate level class, and the students are asked to create a short film, and they can, if they want, use film that they find on the Internet Archive, or they can use film from the Chatham Archives collections. So, and then when they use those films, if they create a film based on the material in the archives, then we can add that to the student films collection. And with the assignment, the students they're charged with the responsibility to create a production plan, to make a cohesive work that's ready for exhibition, and to make editorial decisions. Mm-hmm. They can shoot contemporary footage to include in their film, and they can also use footage from other collections in the archive, so from our print or photograph collections. And this film here It's a really wonderful film that a student created for this assignment, talking about the May Day celebrations that I referenced earlier, and a particular one that happened in 1947. And he used all sorts of material from the archives to tell the story, and it's just a fantastic piece.
Yeah, it's got an audio track to it, so I can't actually play it right now without disrupting our conversation. But and we don't have time to really like play it through. But it's a really great kind of capstone project that ties together some of the primary sources and special collections material that's being made available online, and then students taking that and creating their own work with it. It's a fun video, and I think a great assignment that other people who are sort of digitizing these institutional history collections could definitely recreate at their institutions. So I appreciate you giving us the sort of quick overview of that project and the assignment, because I think it could be really valuable to people.
Absolutely.
So I want to invite people to very quickly submit any questions that they have for Molly, and so you can do that in that questions panel. It looks like we've managed to kind of get through the ones that came in while we were talking, so that is unprecedented, and I'm patting myself on the back for that. I'm going to quickly put up a contact slide so that you can, if you have questions about anything and we aren't able to cover them in these last few minutes, feel free to reach out to Molly. And also, I wanted to plug Chatham Archive's fantastic social media feeds, because they're doing this like a hashtag 150 throwbacks, where they're posting kind of gems from the archives, which is really fascinating. And I spent a lot of this morning going through all of that. And you guys just have really good social media outreach. So people who are also interested in how to do effective social media outreach should touch base with Molly and get tips.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's a part of our 150th campus anniversary celebration. So It's been fun to be able to integrate the history into that anniversary.
Yeah, I especially love the image that you guys have chosen as your icon. It's like very recognizable.
Yes, it's one of the May Day costumes. It's from our May Day collection. The pageantry and the costumes that the students created for these events were just so elaborate and wonderful.
Yeah, I feel like I need to refresh my understanding of May Day and May Day celebrations in the United States after looking at some of these. It seems to have been like such an event at Chatham. And
yes, a lot of women's colleges particularly did them. Chatham is now fully co-educational, but we were founded as a women's school, and a lot of women's schools did these May Day celebrations. There's still a little bit of a May pole dance that happens on University Day at Chatham, so that the tradition is still alive, but the celebrations in the day would bring crowds of 5,000-6,000 people to campus to watch.
That's amazing. We have a question about the student films project, where John is asking, regarding the movies, did you downsize them to a certain size for online viewing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are posting them as an MP4 when we get the donation from the students, and we do, through the donation process, do a complete deed of gift and go over licensing with the students as they're depositing it. But I ask for a wave or an MOV. To have as a preservation backup, but I often only just get the MP4 so far. Okay. But it's definitely my request to the students to give me the highest quality version that they can, but often that is just the MP4.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned that, I think, was it there was basically one round of this class so far, and when we were looking at the collection, there was only one video that's actually been published, but that this assignment is actually in progress again. So it's being repeated, and you'll presumably have sort of rolling submissions
Yes.
For future iterations of the same course.
Yes, there's, so we did it once last year, and the course is going on right now. Just a couple weeks ago, I went to the class and showed them how to access the material online, talked to them about their options for using the archival material. We also paired it with a quick tour of the archives, so I showed them some of the other non-digital material that that they would have access to, incorporating into their story. And so far I have had at least, I'm not sure how many, but I've had several of the students who have contacted me about coming in to see additional material to incorporate it, and students who are using the material from the film and audio collections in their project. So hopefully they will choose to submit them to the archives as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think any of the future versions of the assignment would include the oral histories that are part of the craft project?
I mean, they could. They absolutely could. So far, we've really just focused on the historical audio and film collections, but they can use anything that we have. It doesn't have to use those two collections. It could use, like you said, the oral histories. It could pair oral histories with student newspapers, with yearbooks, with even primary source material from other repositories, because I'm happy to help them navigate those as well.
Yeah, that's a great sort of rolling expansion of the assignment that I feel like could be really interesting. Okay, well, it looks like I'm not seeing any more questions come in, though every time I say that, that's exactly when a question will pop up. But I think that we are now 3 minutes over time, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And like I said, feel free to reach out to Molly directly if you have questions that we didn't get to in today's session. And thank you so much, Molly, for joining us and talking at such great length about all of the fascinating stuff you guys are doing at Chatham.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy for any questions that come up.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for joining. We will see you next time. Bye.